Ready for round two?
Welcome to the bonus episode / segment of Slay the Princess. We went through the DLC, the Pristine cut. I was about to say the Pristine blade cut, but it's just the Pristine cut. I'm pretty sure. So not.
Yep, I got it right in front of me. It is not the Pristine blade cut. I don't know how you'd cut a blade, but you know, you do.
I mean, it's our implement. We gotta use it right.
Fuck off. We're gonna need it if we're gonna do the job right.
Yeah.
Out of curiosity, does anybody see a stool?
No, all I see is chains.
Chains? God, yeah. I guess we just hop right back into it, right?
Yeah, so the Pristine blade cut adds I think 2 new princesses and then revamped ones. I think.
It adds 3 princesses.
Oh yes, the other
princess
yes,
and the dragon.
Yeah, it's that
it
one.
Adds the cage, and it adds happily ever after. It expands upon the princesses that were either kind of shit beforehand, or just didn't really go anywhere.
Yeah, like the Fury, which I think even previous episode says nothing happens with the Fury, and it's that's fine.
Yeah, it's literally all roads lead to the Fury, and then all roads lead to being unwound and then dying instantly. Yes, it's always a disappointment because it used to be fuck, it's the Fury. Okay, hi, babe, how are you? Blah. That's as far as it goes.
You're unwound.
But now they changed it up. Now you're unwound in several ways, and this is the tagline for this episode. You can give the demon mommy princess lady a migraine because of how stubborn you are. To the point where she stops unwinding you. So that's fun.
Yeah.
We also have the den, which changed. So there's an alternative to fighting the panther thing in the jungle, whatever the hell she is.
Beforehand, it was my least favorite, and I think it's still my least favorite, but I'm glad it has new shit. Yeah.
And then we've got the apotheosis, which I'll be completely honest, I originally forgot what happens. I thought the apotheosis was already pretty decent.
Yeah, it just kind of just added more to the scene, which...
Yeah.
I don't know if it was needed.
One where she properly ascends, which I think that's one of the newer ones, which I think is cool.
Yeah.
I think there are 2 different versions of that. It's
yeah,
pretty good.
Yeah. I'd say most of the changes that they do to previous princesses are just it's fine. Not much to really talk about.
Other than making it arbitrarily more complex. To get some of the endings for the new changes, not the new princesses, the new chapters are fine, but the changes, God, you'll have to get a specific voice to get 2 possible endings
even
out of
in
5.
Yeah, even in some of it, the cage that I learned, it's if you do not have paranoia with you, or if you have paranoia with you, you can't throw away the blade, but you have the option to kill her.
Mm-hmm.
And then
there's also one where, depending on the voice you have, you can actually get out of the chains, which is crazy. But we should talk about that probably when we actually start.
Well, that's that is paranoia, and then you can stab her. But yeah, the main shit is the 3 new endings, which I find the most interesting out of all of them.
New chapters. There's one new ending.
Oh yeah, I forgot about the actual ending, which we can touch on that quickly because I don't really have much to say about it. Where
you finally kill the big lady. You get the option, the real big lady. You whoop her.
Oh yeah, that's
the ending. That's the big ending.
I mean, it's funny because
aggressive argument with her, and then you fucking just grow a million hands and touch her, I guess. And then you get
Honestly,
the option to kill her.
the lines that you get in that thing is pretty raw. It's like that. I feel like that's the best part of that ending. Besides that, killer. It's funny because I did like a route like that in like my first playthrough. It's like, what happens if I just be evil in all ways? So it's like, I'm glad that's there as like an additional like ending. That's left to be desired, but there's one that I feel like makes up for it.
Sorry, I was trying to find some of the actual things, and I can't. But I vaguely remember there was one that was like, I killed you with merely a thought. Something like that. Which princess was that again? Was that the damsel? Like the paper damsel? And she's like, I killed you with barely even a thought. Even now you are nothing beneath me. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, that's awesome. So that's the new ending. And like Brandon here said, you have to kill a bunch of people to do it. I also did the whole violence route, and got nothing for it. And I was like, that kind of sucks. I always found it kind of weird. It's like you're a godly entity split from the other being. The entire reason for doing so is because you're the only one that can beat them. And you can't even beat them. Like, you can't beat them because they just whoop you with too much facts and knowledge and logic. And so you have to like revert inside and like mental gymnastics your way into being immortal, I guess. Or slaying her inner thoughts, I guess. Which is fine. So yeah, that ending's a little better. I think after you kill her too, like, he just kind of... They kind of expand on the actual walls around you, where it's quite literally you, and how you could have apparently broken out of this thing if you just weren't distracted, which is amusing. This princess takes up too much of my brain. I can't leave hell until the princess stops talking.
I mean, that is literally the whole point of the game, in a sense. That's the whole narrator's like goal, is to get rid of the princess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the concept of death. What else? Do I have anything else to say on the new violence thing? It's bullshit that... What princess was it where you stabbed her and it didn't count? Was it the adversary? Like, we killed the adversary? It's like, nah, that's not it.
I think we didn't stab her. I think we just beat her up. So it didn't count.
Right. Yeah. It was either that or the girl that got crushed in the tree?
You can't... Yeah, it's like you can't be like... You can't be mean to everybody. You have to like physically kill them to get this.
Mm-hmm. One of them was great. We lobbed ourselves off of a bridge to kill her. So that was great. Another one, we just literally talked her into her own death. Yeah. There's also one with the happily ever after, which I guess is a nice enough transition. Do you want to introduce the very first new thing, or should I?
The chain one?
The happily ever after.
Do we want to do the chain one first? Because I don't really have much to say on that than like the other two.
I was just gonna do whatever we managed to get to as like flow wise, but if you want to go for straight to the chain,
we can do happily ever after.
No, we can go to the... Okay, I mean, whatever you want to do. I'm just here.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're the decider. I'm just another voice in your head. They call him the incompetent.
So where do you want to start?
So the cage. We're going to the cage.
Oh, okay, we're going cage. Okay.
Yeah, I guess it's fitting. It's the first one that we came across.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the cage is what happens to the newly expanded prisoner princess. The prisoner princess is when you come in and I believe you just like...
I don't know, you do stuff and
yeah. So this one's great because you come in, you fail to free her for whatever reason, and then the second time around, she comes down with a chain around her neck, and you have to go in and kill her, and if you're an absolute dumbass, or somebody who doesn't understand yet, because they haven't seen enough of the story, that the main character's thoughts will the princess into acting a certain way, when you cut off her head to free her, you can just go, well, she's dead. Oh, she cuts off her own head, yeah. She cuts off her own head, and then you're like, well, I guess she's dead. And then you can leave, and then you come back into the cage, and part of it is she's mad at you for not recognizing that she was actually alive. And she's just like, excuse me, how are we supposed to know?
Yeah.
It's really good.
Then, I think in Cage specifically, I guess that stuff is toned down less than what I remember in previous prisoner interaction. I think with previous prisoner, it's like, oh, you forgot to leave my head or something in the chapter or something. I forget where it was. It's been a while since I played through the game. Then you get into like this really cool, weird, like chain place where where you go down, and then you get like stuck to chains, and the princess's body has basically like a will of her own, and the head just kind of like is very apathetic to everything, and kind of like doesn't consider her body to be her anymore, more like her will going on, which is interesting.
She's literally locked in a cage, dragged around by her body.
Yeah, like a little bird cage, the head.
Mm-hmm. Bird cage with a giant padlock on it. It's neat. Like, when you get into the thing, you go to... I kind of like it, because there's like a subversion of... and I think we'll see this a lot when it comes to this one, but there's a subversion of expectations when it comes to every single princess that's like new, that I've seen. So, for example, when you first get into Chain Dimension or whatever, it's like your standard run-of-the-mill, whatever. You walk over to the cabin, and your expectation is, oh, there's the mirror. I don't know where the hell the blade is. We're going to have to go and grab it and go to the princess. You take one step into the place, and you submit and just fall into a vat, and you get tangled up, and you're stuck with the blade in your
forgot about
hand,
that.
and no way to do it. Yeah, like the very first thing you do is just free fall. You get hooked into a bunch of chains. You can see chains with like meat hooks in his arm, piercing it and like pulling it out and popping as it's awful. And then the princess is there at the far end of the table. She's got chains all unraveling from her body in the dark. You don't even see her head at the start. It's just completely headless. She's got the cage behind her. And every step forward, her head talks, the chains get tighter, and your body gets more and more like on the verge of popping. You see the chains dig even deeper, and some of them start to like pop out, and blood starts to like fester into little boils and bubbles, and it's just awful. It's great. Like, it's so good. You go from shit, here we go again, to oh shit, what's happening? It's really good.
Yeah, and there's a few ways that it can play out. One is, most times is you submit, and you essentially get your head cut off, and then you, the two bodies kind of like spar it out as the two of you kind of like lay down, kind of like in like a third person-esque thing, which is kind of like an interesting metaphor for what they're going for with this. I thought that was neat.
Yeah, the concept of it seems that what they're trying to say, and in fact what the princess likes to elaborate on in this, is the concept that when you are making any of these decisions, you ultimately don't really have much of a choice. It's hurt her, and she hurts you, and that's it. So it's kind of like the thorn in a sense, except instead of reconciliation, it's kind of apathy. Like, you both just kind of sit there as you guys fight, She calls it a dance, which I think is amusing, and that it's beautiful. These gods need couple therapy. I'm just
They really do.
they really do.
And then there's a few more. One where it's just if you have paranoid, you can get free of the chains, and you can just stab her. It's fun. And then another one is you get the option to actually throw away the blade, and then it's like, hey, we should just stop fighting. And then the body's just like, yeah, sure. And then you,
Really?
or something to that line. I watched it like an hour ago or something like that with that,
Oh,
and then
like,
you get to
man,
take.
why didn't you say something?
Then you take the head with you, and the body like pulls like a chain you up with a chain upwards as you get to the surface, and then at the end you get the choice between taking the head out with you or dropping the head back into the pit. It's so
That's
funny.
awesome.
It's so cruel. And as she's like,
that's amazing.
Oh yeah, and there's some like great paneling work where her head falls, and then like the hands come in, and like darkness keeps going, and it's like that's cool. And then the other one's just like, it's cold outside, but this one's interesting because like, that was cold or something like that, like a cruel cruelty to it. Keeping with that pattern of going back to shifting mound.
Yeah. I mean, if you're not cutting off the head of your waifu and then getting her hopes up just to throw her back into the pit of hell so that she can be abducted by effectively a god, what are you really doing with your life, man? Like, that's another afternoon for me. It's awful. So that's the cage, right? Is there anything else?
Yeah, there's not much. It's neat. Not much. Not much else.
I rate it 3 ducks out of 7 cages.
I rate it 2 pristine blades out of 5 crows.
Got it. Okay, that's the bit for this episode, everybody. That's all. You can leave now.
There's nothing more important. There's no other good stuff here. Totally not.
Yeah.
Now
I think we go to the Princess and the Dragon next.
Yeah. Now this is the good shit. This is the shit that. This is like, this is actually like new type of like stuff that you would expect for like this DLC-esque thing.
Yeah, this is the reason that you should re-download the game if you uninstalled it. This specific princess, because a lot happens, and also so much happens that I actually think it's a detriment to people who haven't already played the game to completion prior. They do some things, and I'll talk about it in this one, that screws over new players for like the allure of the total game. I just basically straight up spoils certain aspects of the game. But for people who are returning, who've already seen everything, it's fantastic. Like, this single-handedly is the reason why I think that they should be gated behind having to like complete so many princesses before this or something.
Yeah,
but,
I would agree with you on that, but how hard is this? This one's like, I guess it's not like too hard to get because you go. I think you just coldly kill the princess and then you get to the Spectre. So if you keep going down that route, you could theoretically get this one first.
Yeah, you have to coldly slay the princess, and then you come back with the cold, and then she possesses your body, and you stab yourself, and then she launches herself out of your body and drags you with her.
Mm-hmm.
And then you watch yourself die.
Yeah, and then you are basically now a voice in the princess. And there's been a lot of similar routes like this, where like the princess and you are kind of like sharing the same space, but this time it's just literally just you and the princess together. And it's very interesting dichotomy where you get to see the princess's perspective of like the start and all that.
Yep. And it's kind of trippy. So it's one of those that are perfectly aligned with what's the nightmare one? There's one route where you go to the nightmare lady and something happens and you get to see the princess's life from the perspective of like
the
existing outside of
it's the absolute one, something like that.
And you get to see like the life cycle after life cycle after life cycle of the princess basically existing for all eternity, doing like nothing human and just being stuck in the place, or living to be stuck in the place, the cabin in the woods. Which is neat. This one takes it a little bit differently by showcasing what she actually does on transition. So, for example, one of the things that distinguishes you two is when she dies, she's instantly teleported back directly to where she's supposed to be with a chain around her arm, instantly, immediately, with all her memories intact and everything. Whereas you have your title screen and like, this is the chapter, and you're in the middle of the woods, and ahead of you lies a path, and across the path is a forest, and in the forest is a cabin, and in the cabin's a princess, and blah, 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 blah. She doesn't have any of that. She just like, she goes from trying to flee to immediately teleported back. It's like A to B. It's interesting. And secondly, the other thing to note is her body, she actually witnesses being undecided by the player when the player is constructing its internal narrative of what the princess should be. Now, there's reasons for this happening this time that I think is different than it happening in a more general sense. Because for most, if not every single princess, she will be decided prior to you even like quote unquote loading back into this world, right? But in this one, there's like a special occurrence. You're in her head. And obviously you still regenerate. Your body, at least. Brandon, you want to explain that bit?
The regeneration bit?
No, just the other side of the story.
The
because we're the princess.
Are you just talking about the creature?
Yeah, us without us. Unless you have anything else you wanted to talk about first.
Okay. Oh no, I'll do something to. So yeah, you see, you kind of like reforming yourself, and that kind of like creates like a slight, almost contradiction in how you and the princess like coexist and see each other. And then that in comes stage left us, the monster or the dragon. There's a little bit before we come in where we talk to her about like, how was your thing go? And it's like, you're gonna laugh. Don't laugh at me. I see this title card and whatnot, and then it's like, and then she's like, what is it called? The Princess and the Dragon? It's like, the Princess and the Dragon? Why is it the dragon? Oh, she sees us as a monster. Oh boy. And then, since we don't have control of our body, all the voices in our head just come out wholesale as like multiple different personalities, like no longer internal, and all that. It's also very funny. All that like internal bickering and all that is in real time.
It's revealed to be in real time. So have you ever sat there for like a minute considering your options? The princess had to sit through that whole agonizing minute of this fucking weird like crow dog humanoid monster thing with like 2 wings and a giant snickering mouth and glowing eyes, and it's just Christ, you're terrifying.
Yeah, and huge.
Huge. You're massive. You're easily twice the size of her, if not more.
Yeah. And there's like the art style is also different in the princess's perspective. It's a lot more dark and sketchy, from what I remember. I forget who specifically is there. I think Opportunist is there with the cold.
It's the Opportunist, the hero, the cold, and the narrator.
Yeah, and the narrator, yeah.
And I think the narrator is the only one who doesn't talk.
Yes, which is very fascinating because they do allude to him as well, which is fun. The hero acts the neutrality, or like, I'm sorry, but not all of us want to decide this, because they're bent on, doing the
They're
deed.
debating as to whether or not they should kill the princess or not.
Yeah,
And it's
so
like split down the middle.
it's split down the middle, but the narrator is kind of like pulling the strings because narrator Opportunist wants to kill, and then hero and cold don't, but he's getting outruled by them. And I love the Opportunist just like holding the dagger back and forth every time he goes back to his sprite. It's just, ooh, it's so good.
He like holds it with like a loose grip just above his head with like a smirk and a cocky head, mostly covering his body with his wings and waving the dagger back and forth playfully, kind of showcasing the power difference that there is there. It's very fun. And then whenever it switches between the personalities too, it swaps back and forth. So the Opportunist does that. The hero kind of like looks really sad and looks away slightly, kind of hiding himself and shirking down. And the cold just stares at you dead on. Just no emotion in his face whatsoever. It just becomes like a shadowed figure with bright white eyes and tinge of blue and just staring at you infinitely. It's awful.
The three personalities, truly.
Yeah. God, he isn't him when he's hungry, eh? Should have gotten the Snickers. It would have solved everything. So yeah, they have a talk. They eventually decide to kill the princess.
Yeah.
In quotes.
Yeah, and then
partially because the Opportunist realizes that you are in the princess's body, and he's like, I can take over now. I'm gonna kill this guy.
Yeah, and you and the princess start trying to like work together and trying to like, hey, maybe if you thought not killing, and then it's like, well, that didn't work. When there's no, it's interesting when like I don't know why I'm gonna say the id. I don't think that's the correct terminology, but like the identity of like the personification of the choice is not there. So they can just do whatever they like. And before they you get stabbed, you switch right back into your body.
Yeah. The moment the connection happens with the knife, it's immediate and you go straight back to your body. And the Opportunist is still going like, yeah, this is great. We finally got him. Oh shit, he's here.
Well, no, it's like, oh, who's this guy? Oh, because Opportunist wasn't here beforehand. Because it's like, well, I always trusted in you, man. It was always us.
The moment you get back into your body, the Opportunist is like, oh, I was always on your side. I never, ever thought against you.
So,
it's like, man, this whole like being in charge thing really just is not my forte. Then, of course, eventually, one of the options is to get transported back to the princess, to which he then responds by killing you again. Dude is just a sniveling coward, and I am here for him.
Yeah. At this point, you actually get the choice of like slay, not slay. If you don't slay, it's just kind of like standard. You go out with outside with her. You both lay on the ground. It's like, nice. This is cold. But the truly interesting one is when you either attempt to slay her or you're forced to slay her. And as you stab her, you go back to yourself, and then you go back, and then you get like lodged in between two identities before you become like one person. And it's a very trippy and very cool scene. I guess there's also one difference with how the princess acts, kind of like how the first choice, you either get the nice princess or the angry princess.
The
and you get
princess
to have
is the queen in this one. Nice princess is just like, excuse me, sir. Angry princess is straight up like, yo, I'm talking here. They lose her. It's great.
it's good. But yeah, no, it was really fun seeing like this different perspective on it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think
You
it
also,
necessarily ruins the allure of the character. It does.
I think it says too much and shows you what you look like. And I think those two things are fine if you've already beaten the game. Like, the whole allure of the mirror is that, well, what do I look like? Or why am I so fucked up? Like, you can only kind of see yourself in the shadows, right? You move back the layer of grime and there's still like this just covering of darkness over you, regardless of what you mostly do, with your face obscured by your hand as it withers or melts or whatever have you.
And to an extent,
but
it's still that.
yeah, but now you know you have wings, which is like crazy. You know what your feet look like. You know what your hands look like. You know you're fucking huge. Like, you go from like in my head when I viewed the character, I almost viewed him as like a meek humanoid with like barely like a mutant almost, like barely raven features, messed up hands. You know what I mean? Like just a creature that was mostly human. When I saw this, it's like, you're a monster. You're just not. You should. I can't imagine myself as genuinely scared as that character anymore. I can only imagine every single scenario as like, I'm a 10-foot tall dinosaur. Like, who cares?
But
you know.
But is that the true perspective, or is this just the princess's perspective on us?
Well, the princess can't change us through her perspective. She can only be changed by our perspective.
Yeah, but she can still perceive the world. She has her own vision of it. So it's not like necessarily this is what we are. This is what the princess sees us as. Because it's not like
I guess that's the point.
It's not like a true objective perspective, because there's none of that here. It's all like personal perspectives. But like, I do get what you mean. It's like, here's like a version of this character that the game is giving you as like, here's an answer to this. It doesn't need to be like the one true answer. It's just like, it's like the most like quote unquote correct answer. And I feel like it does like, it does shift the perspective of, it does put like things into like like different contexts, which is, I feel like, is interesting and neat that that this can do that.
Yeah, that's why I think it would be better if you've like completed at least an ending. Because even like, you do have some merit with respect to the way his hands are, even. Because his hands are definitely more
human-like,
strong looking, I guess, in this specific one. And his mouth is very dog-like. But in most of them, you can't even see his mouth. So there's a part of me that's curious, like, her mentioning you are the dragon, if you gained dragon-like features. Because a lot of, they haven't confirmed whether or not you even have a beak. But you definitely don't have a beak in this one, right? But the Twitter lady, she has mentioned beak before. So it's like, okay, do you look the way that you do because that's what she views you as in this specific instance?
Or maybe it's like you also change as well, depending on stuff like she changes.
Yeah. Yeah, because I'm even looking at one. There's when you're beating each other as the adversary. There's a picture of that, and you definitely don't look like you have wings in that one. Furthermore, your body looks a lot smaller, and your mouth is just gone, to be perfectly honest. She ripped it off. But you don't look like a giant monster in the same way that you do with the original one. So I like that theory. I'm curious if that's actually the case.
I think that's what I vaguely remember them saying, something like that. Like, they definitely
That's the
made
other
that.
thing, though.
They made the character like ambiguous to begin with.
Well, also consider too. This is the other thing I didn't like about this chapter. They just straight up tell you this is how the world works, which I think ruins the magic entirely.
Okay,
Like, hey, when I perceive you in this way, or when you perceive me in this way, like when she looks at herself, she's like, "Oh, I guess you haven't decided yet." It's like, "Oh, okay, so that's how the game works." You know what I mean? Like every other one, and one of the reasons I really liked it is like you can piece it together on your own the moment you've done one, or 4 chapters. You've done 4 chapters, you understand it. You've done one ending, even a little bit before that, you're like, okay, I get how it works. Like I change her perspective. Okay, that makes sense. But like the way that they do it is bits and pieces from different angles, right? It's like, if you think a certain way, then she has a tendency to reflect, or you can't know about the way that the universe works because just your understanding of how the universe works would change how things work, or so on and so forth. Like they give you pieces. And then once you get to the mirror at the very end and you talk to Bird Daddy is like, yeah, so this is how it all goes down, right? But with this one, you could just stumble upon it as your first ending. It's not a particularly hard one to get to. And now you just know everything from the get-go. It's like, okay, so I change, or I can not only have voices in my head, but they can move, I guess. So there's some sort of like linking between the two of them, and they explicitly state like, oh yeah, it feels better when you're in my head. Okay, so they're some sort of whole. Also, the world definitely changes, but also the princess explicitly changes, and she changes based on the way that people think about things, and it's specifically the main guy. It's not the personalities. And then they also explicitly state like, oh, well, the new guy's here. Oh, there's new personalities, and like they're guaranteed and they're aware of this, and they've also existed before. And it's like there's so much that's said in this one chapter. I feel like this one specifically should have been waited on. You know what I mean? Like just the more
I now that you're talking about it, I've had this experience with this other game that made me like, oh, this is so cool. And then I was like going through, it's like, oh, they're not mentioning this. Oh, they're not mentioning this. In this case scenario, they mention it all the time. But minor spoilers for Virtue's Last Reward. I went down an ending where it's like, oh my god, we're going through different time loops. We can remember each route thing. Oh man, okay, let's do this. And then for every single other route, they don't remember it. It was only the first route I got is like, oh, these are all routes going through different stuff. So like a cool reveal. It was also at the very right of the flow chart. So if you went left through right, technically this like reveal would be very like impactful. Or like, oh, cool, but it's like very first one. It's like, oh, that's cool, but it's like, they're not mentioning it. They're not mentioning it.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, you're telling us everything, and it's a cool moment. And like on our level, it's cool because it's like it's not even a reveal at this point. It's just like, hey, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. This is what's happening. It's like, okay, yeah, I kind of figured it out, but it's cool that you're saying it. Like we can acknowledge.
I will say it. This is like, I feel like 0. Like very few people will get this in their like first run through.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to have stories. I think, to be honest, though, like the possibility of that even happening is pretty low at this point, because I doubt that many new people are going to play Slay the Princess, and if they are because of the new DLC, the likelihood of them encountering the specific one isn't that great. Like, I get it; it's not a big deal. I'm just saying that it is something to be concerned about, to think about necessarily.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. But I think that basically covers the Princess and the Dragon.
Yeah, and then the final one, and this one's the epilogue. This one is like how this one doesn't have any requirements for it is beyond me. This one I'm more like how is this just like straight up like here you go. Here's like it's my favorite new addition that they've added to this game. It's the most thematic princess TM out of them all. You thought all these other princesses were thematic? Nope. Throw that throw that out of the window. This is the most thematic one. Thorns? Throw that shit in the
Canonical
bin.
best girl. We have a canonical best girl. They have decided. They have spoken. The developers have coded. Fuck you and your best girls. Not. It's this one.
So this one is like also shockingly really easy to get. There's two ways that you get through it. It's mainly going through the damsel. And the damsel didn't really have much before. It was basically leave with damsel or stab her to get the gray ending or continue on with Paper Princess. Just like, that's a few.
It was originally the entire purpose of it was literally just to go like, hey, we don't do this kind of story here. This whole lovey-dovey, isn't it cute, things happening well, that story is going to be viewed as superficial. We're going to make jokes about it, we're going to laugh about it, and then we're going to shunt her out and then make a joke character that'll show up just to be annoying. Like, that's it, right? They expanded upon this one, and they're like, okay, but what if...
But what if
and they became more nuanced.
But what if you stayed forever?
And ever.
And ever. So there's two ways to get this ending.
Ever.
You either keep going with the Paper Princess and you select one option and then you'll get paranoid with you in this one. Or you just straight up, when you're about to leave, it's like, let's stay. And it's like, okay, and then you'll get the stubborn.
No, it's not okay.
Well,
Remember,
we'll get to
you go up the stairs. When are we gonna get to it? Because God, it's so good.
Right now we're getting to this shit right now. I was getting the build up because this is this is the funniest like heel turn like shit. So you go up the stairs, and it's like, oh, let's stay forever. It's like. She goes like, "Oh, are you sure?" I love that.
I don't know you. That's explicitly what she says,
which is fucking
like,
wild. Which is
I don't know you.
Which is so brutal as well because it's like, oh, you just go mask off like hard right there.
Yeah,
like,
you go from like, what do you want to do? I don't know. Whatever you want to do. No, but seriously, what do you want? I don't know. Whatever you want to do. To like. Oh, shit, I have to make a reason why we can't stay here. It's so good.
Yeah, and then it's like, Smin's like, she's faltering. I must show her how much I love her. And then proceeds...
like, oh shit, this is getting a little awkward. Hold on a second, I've got a plan.
And then Smin, without any decision from our part, rips open our ribs. Right open the chest.
Nails into our chest, grabs our rib cage by the nails, and fucking tears open our chest to show our heart. What the fuck?
Hello, Alex? Oh no, his internet died.
What? Are you still here? Oh, something happened. My man is gone and lost. Oh, my internet died on this one. I'm back.
There we go.
I think.
Yeah.
I think I was getting too loud. Somebody turned on and off the router.
But it is glorious. And then I forget, like with the princess, she's just like, oh, okay. She's almost like in, like, not
She's
into
into
it.
it. She digs it. Yeah. She saw your open, bare, beating heart, and she's like, "Oh, hey, I see what you're putting down."
And then
everything goes dark,
and you die. And you awaken in this luxurious castle in epilogue happily ever after. And you awaken with hero, narrator, and stubborn, and it's like, oh shit, here we go again. But someone's not here.
A man is missing. Whoever could it be?
If you get stubborn / paranoid, but if you don't, paranoid is immediately like, there was a guy with us. What happened to him? And then, not stubborn. I think it's opportunist. It's like, what a lovely show this is. And they never mention Spin ever again in the opportunist route. It's really
if we've
funny.
learned anything from The Princess and the Dragon, the opportunist, despite how crafty sounding he is not particularly bright. we love our himbo murderer.
If you attempt to leave this place, I did not know this, there's a wall blocking you. You can't leave. There's also no knife. You have no options. You have to go up the stairs. You have to go up, not down.
Mm-hmm.
Which is
a
also
new predicament. You're going to the attic, no longer the basement.
Mm-hmm. And then the princess calls for you to come, upstairs for dinner.
Yeah.
The housewife.
Congratulations, boys. We've officially wifed a woman. We will split custody of our wife.
Spin will get her for the weekends.
Yeah.
You get her for the weekdays.
No,
Spin would have her for 6 days, and we would have her for 1.
Yeah, and he'd have to supervise. So you go up for dinner, and you sit down, or rather, you're forced to sit down at a table. It's a big-ass table in a room lit by 4 torches. At the very end is your darling wife, kind of awkwardly smiling at you.
Yeah.
Behind her is a massive shadow cast from the lights onto the chair across her crown. Jagged at the top, smooth on the sides, and it seems to wobble in a way that doesn't quite look natural. Not to mention, it's massive, easily 3 to 4 times the size of the princess herself. Yet nobody pays it any mind as you sit down, and dinner's ready, of course.
It won't really come up unless you do paranoid, but the massive shadow is fucking smitten.
And if you mention it to him, he smiles. He's just like, yeah, you know it, boy.
And funny enough, he somehow got into her head because she can hear his voice.
Mm-hmm.
Which is very interesting coming off the Princess and the Dragon ending, because there's been a precedent for this, so it's interesting what their relationship was and whatnot.
I'm almost curious, they mention that there's a part of you that's taken out from her when he splits you from one god to 2. I'm curious if it is the smitten. Or if it is 1 or 2 voices. And also, on top of that, I wonder if she got the smitten because she did a route that wouldn't... Because, we got the smitten from treating her like a damsel, right? From treating her as this precious little snowflake or whatever. And then showcasing some notion of love for her. And when it comes to Thorn, it's the same thing. You flirt with a cat. that sounds weird. Anyway, flirting with the cat aside, when you showcase any sort of like expression of outward love to the princess, you get the smitten. If she has the smitten, I wonder if witnessing your heart actually triggered an admiration deep enough from her perspective to get the smitten, and it just stole it from you. So I'm curious if the smitten's even like your voice, or if it's
just
a voice.
or
I wonder
it's like
if
a
the
voice.
princess. Yeah, I wonder
if
the
you guys
princess
share
gets
voices.
other versions of your voices. Yeah, in other areas. Or if it's just like a rare occurrence. Because not only do you go in her head in this new set, but also the smitten goes in her head at some point. Like, but at the same time, she's never once mentioned that she's heard these voices, and furthermore, she's always surprised when she's in your head. So I am curious.
Like Shifting Mound is always aware of the narrator. I'm pretty sure, but that's like a different thing from the voices. So like, I think she's
when
aware.
She's in Apotheosis, it's the same kind of idea too, because she says, "Look at these broken glass pieces all on the ground."
So you sit down and say some niceties, and it's like, let's have some dinner. Why not?
How was work at the mines, honey?
And then you eat, and it's like, this is the best food you've ever had. Also, to a big thing that makes this feel extra isolating is like it's a really long end table. Something like it's traditionally used where like one person sits on the far end of the table and one person sits on the other. It represents like distance in a relationship. Usually is like a cinematic framing device. You saw that you see it a lot in like 50s or 60s cinema. Instead of like sitting close together and interacting, is like also like a sign of like wealth and like kind of like status. And also like royalty, I guess, is another way to do it. But I feel like in this instance, it's representing like, you know, that almost like this fake happiness, like because you can barely see her sprite at all during this whole interaction, because even if you try to get up, you're forced to stay down due to the shadow smitten. So everything that's about to happen is kind of like forced upon you. So like the food itself is like, oh, this is like amazing, great, the best shit you've ever had. And it's like, I guess what else do we do? I guess we could have it, or well, no, it's you eat it, but you still feel hungry. And it's like, oh, I guess let's just
and
have.
Then you infinitely consume more and more and more and more, and every time it's just that much worse.
Yeah,
you go from this pristine, beautiful skin on the chicken, and the grapes are freshly peeled, and the wine is bubbly and delicious, all the way down to like the wine is somehow greasy, and the chicken is too, and sopping wet. And
it's like the sickly sweet
rotten.
aroma of the goblet. It's like too much to bear.
Yeah.
And a line that the narrator says, basically after this whole dinner thing is done, because like the voices try to justify, like, oh, this is good. Oh, it's not as good. And it's like opportunist on our playthrough. It's like, it's free food, or it's like, it's great. And then eventually it's like, we used to eat like kings, now we eat like pigs. And the narrator at the end goes, and I really like this line, at least you still have the memory of how good it was the first time, right? And that's a lie I want to get into a little bit later. But
yeah, I mean, this and Thorn are probably the best endings for just interpreting the relationship aspect of them.
Relationship, meta aspect, in-game, there's so many layers. But eventually the princess kind of is like, this is not good anymore, is it? And then like one of the four lights like goes out, so it's like
immediately.
Yeah, so like any not happy thoughts immediately like
Literally
breaks
extinguish the fires of passion immediately.
passion, or
The
like
moment.
another way to look at it is like the lights. It's like these are like false lights hiding like the true reality of the situation as well.
Mm-hmm.
And each one of the flames going out is like, oh, you're seeing what this thing is really is, and they have to burn even brighter to hide the to keep trying to keep this illusion up.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, you go on to play a board
Board
game
Mm-hmm.
with her, and then
And this is the most, like, the game developers trauma dumping this entire section. I refuse to believe otherwise. For anybody who's played board games, they've gone through this exact same sequence.
yeah, where it's like, we don't know any of the rules to this game. We'll just kind of go along as
But it's a
we
simple game, so we'll learn as we go.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you play it a couple times, you're like, man, that kind of game is really fun.
It's
But,
very funny.
It's gotten simple and a little easy and a little boring. What if we add new rules or get a more complex game? And then you just go on and on and on and on and on until whatever the hell you're doing is basically esoteric. Nobody else can relate to what your interests are. You started out with chess, and now you're in some sort of like, yeah, I conquer galaxies and space, and generate populations, and manage economics. Like,
yeah, and then yeah, the just trying to do stuff to like fill time and just trying to like re-spark that passion of like the first few games. Nothing there, and then it breaks even more, and then eventually you get down to like one torch left. And it's like, are we really happy? Am I happy? And that's when like the illusion breaks and like everything's dark, and the princess is just like hands in head, just crying, and it's just such a raw, hard cut that is like devastating, because this is like the state. This is where like our choice to like attempt to live in this like almost like
it's like
apathy. It's like you didn't really try anything. You just like try to keep the problem off. It's like we could like, it's like slay or free princess, or it's like let's live in like the memory of this whole thing instead of like moving on from this situation. Mm-hmm. Feeling like trapped and trying to convince ourselves that it's not this.
Mm-hmm. It's really good if you guys haven't figured that out yet.
It's really good. One thing when she says is like, do you care about me? Have you ever cared about me? And there's very like many things. I think my favorite response is like, no, none of this has been real, but I want to try to make this real.
My favorite one is I'm not sure I've ever had a chance to actually sit down and think about it. It's just like completely automatic at this point.
Mm-hmm. And then, oh yeah, go for it.
Because like you hear about that all the time with like puppy dog love with like teenagers or whatever, where they'll get together because hormones, and then they'll accidentally create this just terrible relationship, and then they just kind of keep cruising it because they don't know what else to do, right? So it's not built on a foundation of something that makes sense. It's like two adults meeting in a nightclub, having a night together, and then they just get into domestic life. It's just bizarre. It's like, yeah, it was fun when it started, but did we ever actually consider this as a real thing, or are we just going through the motions of what we think the real thing should be? Which I think is interesting when you brought up the status aspect of the long table, because it's like, maybe that's the point, is to is to generate the ideal of what it should be instead of necessarily living through it.
And then you have the option to it's basically take her hand or not take her hand. As also beforehand she mentions that like instead of being here, like she wants to go outside and dance with the stars. And like in this route, this is like the first time of like what she wants instead of like something that was that's totally unrelated to everything that's going on. Is like this is like her one thing is just to just go outside and just be. And then you get the option to either take her hand or not take her hand, but it's essentially like the same thing.
Either you dance with her or she just kind of chats with you.
Well, you dance with her either way. But yeah, you before you go outside, the most fascinating thing happens is where it's like, oh, narrator, you haven't chimed in for a bit. What's going on? You're just gonna let us leave? And it's like, I've seen where my fairy tale ending gets me, and I'm done. I'm just...
Yeah, the narrator gives up.
It's... He saw what he essentially wanted, where... I forget like
So,
what he specifically...
In the context of him, his universe is ending. And he found a way to take the concept of change and the concept of... I don't remember what you are. I think it's the concept of basically everything else. It's change and stagnation. And he split it in... Or he conjured it as a god, something that can be killed. And then he split it into two. His whole goal from the start of this, as a reminder, has been to get you to kill the princess so that he can prevent any death from happening ever. But as a side effect, he also stops anything from ever changing ever. So everything becomes a stagnant universe where everything is the exact same forever. And the mantra that he's used is, that's still better than nothing. Something is still better than nothing. Because the universe will be nothing soon. And in this ending...
And most times...
It's the only time where he has witnessed the ending that he wanted from a party that wasn't the one who initiated the ending. He had to live in the ending. And it's the first and only time where he actually acknowledges that he's creating a hell that's worse than the end of everything.
Because there's many times when, like, you do the deed and then you just kind of sit up there and then it's like, isn't this perfect? Isn't this great? Nothing will happen ever. We're fine. And that there's no one really to, like, challenge him on it because we're basically him in a sense. In like the closest version.
Yeah, if he's the initiator, he can kind of be the referee. And with that respect, arguing with us is entertaining to him. At least enough, right? But in this situation, he has no control over anything. He doesn't really have something to argue. Most of it he was just witnessing the same way you were. So I think it gave him enough time to be outside of the peripheral of in charge of the situation that he actually had to bear witness to what his creation would be.
Because you have very few choices. You can slay her in this instance. And doesn't really like nothing really special happens. Just you kill her. But yeah, that's just so interesting. And then you go outside, and then it's like, do you want to dance on the stars? And then just you dance, and it's a really beautiful scene. Really just... It's like the most quietest, like, loudest sentiment of this, of just pure joy and, like, happiness. It's the best way to, describe it. where just like for a brief moment it's like, this is real. This is a real thing. Everything before that, superb. Nothing. This is it. And I teared up a bit. I did really tear up at this game that much, but that scene choked me up. After.
Don't worry, guys. His tears flexed manly as they ran down
Why do
his
you
face.
always say this?
Do I?
You do. It's every single time.
I don't know. I just really like the idea of like them coming out like "Oorah!"
And that's essentially the epilogue, but I feel like we both have more to say with this one.
I've actually said basically everything I wanted to, so if you have more, go ahead.
Okay, so... Okay.
I will remind you, though, we're at an hour.
Oh, yeah, no. With this, it'll be basically over. So I feel like you mentioned game dev getting off their chest of like the with like the board game of like doing it over and over again. I feel like this of like the food and the game metaphor is like the perfect encapsulation of like this game almost of like it keeps it was really like your first time around is like, this is great, and then more of creatures more is like, it comes less and less, and it's like you're trying to like keep like that like passion like burden of like the first time around, and it just kept, it's like diminishing returns almost. With like how many like routes you go down, how many like princes you see, everything starts to lose like meaning. In a sense, everything is like, here's like this decision tree. Here's this one thing, and I feel like this like encapsulates like almost my like it brings almost like my criticisms from like what like. Because it's not really the game's fault that it has multiple stuff, and then it's like, you want to see all the stuff, and like your first route is going to be like the most magical one. But it feels good because like it's almost like a rejection of like the more, in a sense, of like
of hedonism,
of like more shit is not going to make you happy. It's not going to recapture what you once had. It's just going to prolong like just like here's dopamine. Here's this. Here's this is fun. This is a little neat. It's like there's not really much to it. It's just this is neat. It's like almost like no meaning sense, and I'm not saying like everything doesn't have like all the other routes just don't mean anything. I haven't really delved into it, but it feels like almost a commentary of like additional content, and I guess this game in its whole as well.
Mm-hmm. I can see that, yeah.
That's like especially as this is
these Zoomers got to get off their TVs because the dopamine is not gonna fulfill them forever.
It's just more like interesting because it's like these are feelings that like I felt while playing this game. Eventually, because I played more of this game than you have. So I've seen a lot of
By
it.
An hour or two, yeah.
Yeah, because I've seen like not like every single like possibility, but like most most of it. So I definitely started feeling like that, like, okay, checkbox, here's this checkbox, here's that. And I feel like that's not like the best way to experience it. So like when like that dance happened, it felt like, oh, this feels substantial. This feels meaningful. This means something to me. To like, I don't know, like to like examine, to like think about.
Yeah.
I really like this ending.
I can tell.
Yeah, no, game's still good. Pristine cut. Add some good shit. It's more of what you came for. You came back.
Yep.
And if you haven't, here's more shit.
Yep.
And it's like if someone experiences like this, like fifth or whatever, it's power. Like it's like now this is like your experience, and then like they get like their own different perspective on what it means to them.
Yeah, but they have to be careful with that, because if they have too many perspectives, they'll turn into a giant, massive orange.
Yeah, you can't have too many perspectives, or you'll just infinitely be an infinite loop of nihilism. Truly, This is the message of the game. No other meaning. Having multiple perspectives means you're nihilistic. Totally.
Man, we've done great work today.
Anyways, bye.
Bye-bye.